The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ian Robson, and I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Salesforce in the UK. I'm delighted to welcome you to this fifth webinar in our series on implementation expertise. In a few moments, I'll hand you over to our partner Cloud Perspective, who will be presenting today's webinar. Before I do that, just a couple of points to cover. Firstly, to enable you to participate fully in this webinar series, I'd like to direct you to our online community on success.salesforce.com. If you can take a moment now to search for and join the group UKI Implementation Expertise Webinars, or you can find the details in your webinar confirmation email. This group is used for a variety of purposes, including communicating future webinars, providing details of how to register for these webinars, and also acting as a repository for collateral, including webinar recordings and slide decks. It's also where you can pose questions and get answers from the presenters today. Secondly, these webinars are designed to provide insight into the implementation of specific technologies and capabilities, or into areas of specific interest for customers. I'd love to hear your feedback on the content of these webinars, so please do feel free to contact me either through a direct message or a public posting in the online community. This webinar will be listen-only mode with Q&A moderated by myself. If you have questions during the webinar, please submit these through the GoToWebinar chat window, and we will endeavour to answer them all at the end of the webinar. With that, I hope you find the webinar valuable, and we'll get started on the main content now. So thank you for joining us, and Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Martin Lehman, and I'm the CEO at Cloud Perspective. And I want to tell you about our unique take, really, on driving customer success in the Salesforce world, and how we help customers to adopt Salesforce in a more meaningful manner. I'll move forward. Yeah, so Cloud Perspective, not CloudSense, they're a great company, but Cloud Perspective have been around for 3 years. When we formed the business, we very quickly noticed that any major issues with Salesforce at all are not at all about the product. But albeit all of our employees are Salesforce certified, we focus our business upon data quality and resolving data quality issues for customers. So this is our corporate slide. I'll move on from this to hopefully something more interesting. So we really have two types of customers that we try and help in terms of their data. We have the early Salesforce adopter, and some of our customers have had Salesforce for up to 13 years in their business environment. And 13 years ago, there were some issues with Salesforce in terms of how it was implemented, because it was a new product, and people didn't understand that it needed to really have the same sort of governance that any IT sort of solution needs to have. So we find ourselves helping early adopters to move things forward, apply some real standards to their orgs, and really do a reboot in terms of where they want to take their solution. They still realise that Salesforce is a great solution, but they also realise that there were some issues with their adoption of Salesforce in the early days. And then the second type of customer we also have are those who are new to Salesforce. So they're invariably using other CRM systems. They recognise that Salesforce as a leader in the market is the place where they want to take their business. But they've got a load of data that they need to move, get cleansed, and deduplicated and moved into the Salesforce environment. So to give you a couple of examples of those, we're currently working with a major US events company, and they have had Salesforce for 13 years. When they first bought the system, they had very few users on there. It was really to solve a small problem within their business in terms of customer relationships. But now they've got circa 1,000 users and 3 million accounts. All the custom fields have been used, so that they have 500 fields within their account object, and they have greater than 20% duplication, because there was really no governance about creation of accounts in the early days. They have 29 installed packages from various free packages and that sort of thing. And on their account object, we very quickly noticed that they have 20 individual account triggers. So when we went in there with tools to try and resolve some of their data issues, we couldn't even get those tools to work at all, because they conflicted with the other account triggers. So as part of the resolution for this customer, our advice has been, no, you really need to get your Salesforce into line. The best practice in terms of account triggers is to have one trigger with 20 functions rather than 20 individual triggers going forward. So A lot of what we do is about educating the customer in terms of where their Salesforce solution now is and how they can improve things, get it back online. And then the second company that I've got here is a new organisation to Salesforce. So when we first, and this is 3 months old in terms of a project for us, and they went live last week. But where they had Microsoft CRM. The solution was really in a place where they actually refresh the entire CRM solution every night from a staging object. When they created any account, or a new account was created for every booking, so they had no real idea of their customers and which customers were booking different tours. And they also had 86 separate billing companies, so selling companies worldwide. And they thought, and in fact I have been informed that they have greater than 20% duplication in their account because of the nature of the way that they were creating customers. With the move to Salesforce and how we've helped them, obviously we've migrated each of the 86 selling companies into one single Salesforce object. And as we pass information across from their CRM, we're basically doing so they can get a 360 view of the customer. So rather than a booking creating account, we have a single account and bookings being reparented into that account object. We now have a nightly integration where we're only updating new records coming into the solution. And we have an automated matching procedure. So when a new booking comes in, we match that customer through MDM to actually then get that customer into the right place as far as an account's concerned. And I think the biggest thing for them, and with the greatest respect to Microsoft CRM, Salesforce has really grasped mobile device availability. So the greatest move forward as far as the salesperson is concerned is they can now access all their account information either using Briefcase or Salesforce One on their mobile device, be it a Apple device or a other Microsoft or Google type device. So we work with a variety of different solutions, and how we tend to what we try and do is put these solutions together to actually create a customer experience. So we work with MDM tools, data quality analysis, enrichment services, point of entry deduplication, ETL tools for moving data around a customer's application set, and business process automation. So when we have got data into the right place for customers, how do we then maintain that data source so that it's correct? And I'll talk through what each of these tools actually does, and hopefully by the end of this presentation I'll give an example of how we use all of these tools in an implementation together to actually create a good customer experience as far as their data is concerned. However, there are, as you'll know, and I'm sure people have experienced, there are plenty of expensive tools out there. But what you can also do is help yourself an awful lot. And we realise that not every Salesforce user is in a position to spend thousands of pounds on data quality. But there are things you can do yourself. So what we do as an organisation, in addition to using those expensive data tools, is we also use common tools which are available to us. So we encourage customers to fall in love with spreadsheets again. Now, if you can get your data out into a CSV format, then spreadsheets are a terrific way of analysing your data. And there are a lot of different functions within spreadsheets that people don't commonly use. So if you can learn to understand pivot tables and what they can do for you. A pivot table basically is a way of seeing how many different versions of the same thing are within a spreadsheet. So if you can work out how to use pivot tables, then that is a great free way of starting to think about enhancing your data quality. Understand filtering and sorting. We had one particular customer that had no country data at all, but what we realised is we can very quickly, if we can find out what the city is, we can recognise what the country is from that city. And I think in a 2-hour exercise we managed to enhance 15,000 records with country data, which was required for the MDM processes we wanted to run manually. So again, fall in love with spreadsheets, and that's a great way of starting to think about enhancing your data. SQL and Access are excellent ways for querying data and comparing lists. So you can look at, you can make sure that lists match. You can do joins between various tables, and again, these tools are available within things like Microsoft Office, or if you think about things like MySQL, then they're free to use. And before you actually go and buy any data enhancement tool, you should really clearly understand your data. Don't try and guess the issues, because it will cost you unnecessary money for licensing of these products. We realise the value of data, but again, we also realise the pound in your pocket, and we would encourage any customer to understand their data thoroughly before they spend any money on either our consultancy or the tools that we provide. On integration, many of our projects involve, as I say, a series of things where integrations involve MDM processes, data quality, and so on. But in terms of integration tips, where we've come from, always try to get access to back-end databases. We've spent and wasted many hours trying to find data. The front end is showing something like a pension, but in the back end is in fact the company car field, simply because people have reused fields for their own uses over the years. So get access to back-end databases, not necessarily to integrate directly into tables. We'd encourage people to use APIs so that you're following validation rules between systems, but just to recognize what data is and what you need to move and where. When you're planning an integration or a migration, you should be taking at least 20% of the project time to plan what you're actually going to do. Don't ever enter, or we'd advise you not to ever enter an integration or migration without fully understanding what you're trying to achieve. So any project that we do, at least 20%, I'd say more like 25% of the project, is about planning the project and thoroughly understanding what we're actually going to try and do. And then we always test small. So if ever we create a new task that's going to move data from one database to another, we always test with 1 record, then with 10 records, then with 100 records. Don't ever, in our opinion, run a full migration process across the data set, because, as it says here, it's far easier to fix 1 record than 10,000 records. So start your testing small. With MDM, an MDM within the Salesforce environment is interesting. There's 2 ways really that MDM can be done. There's on-premise, which is the standard way of doing the MDM process. MDM is a very high and intensive processing type solution where you're doing things like fuzzy matching. You're trying to recognize data compared to each other. So on-premise is a great way of doing it, where you're taking data out of the Salesforce environment, running these highly intensive processes on there, and then putting data back into the Salesforce environment. There's also another way, and this is really where my company specializes, which is Cloud MDM, which is basically MDM processes within the Salesforce environment. Now, what we've learned over around about 30 projects that we've carried out in this environment with some large customers is that if you try and present blank records to an MDM process, then you'll burst governor limits every time. Because what MDM is trying to do is compare fuzzy matched data together. And in so doing, if you're presenting blank records to it, then it's going to try and compare too much. And you'll soon burst what was the 200,000 process limit that is now a timeout, and MDM will fail. What we see time and time again when customers are running processes over data is that if a job or task or MDM process fails, then there's a great habit of trying to press the button again in the hope that the job will run this time. I'd advise you, if a task fails, it was run the first time, it will fail again when you run it a second or third or subsequent time. And the best thing to do is always step back from the process you're trying to run and go and try and find the issue that's causing the problem. Issues in MDM can be interesting. So in the version that we use of Informatica's Cloud MDM, it will normalize customer names and that sort of thing. And if your salespeople have got in the habit of using things like a full stop or a comma to actually just get past entering a record very quickly, then MDM will always fall over on that sort of issue again. So if you can identify weird records, get them out of the process, then you will get Cloud MDM in particular to work. The other thing with Cloud MDM is that they use a technique called segmentation to get around issues of trying to compare too many records together. If you imagine what MDM is trying to do, it's trying to compare records for likeness, it matches on things like addresses, on names, on telephone numbers and emails. And how Cloud MDM gets around the issue of comparing if you have 10,000 account records, for example, with 10,000 account records, what they do is they segment it. And segmentation is about saying, right, okay, what is the most likely data that we're going to be able to easily recognize 2 customers together? And that's invariably the country where they are, because organizations cannot exist across country boundaries from a legal perspective, and then the company name. So the segmentation in the Cloud MDM world will recognize UK, and in our case, Cloud Perspective, as a segment. You can basically match along the line there. What we try and do whenever we try and implement something like Cloud MDM is we try and understand how many individual records will be in a batch within Cloud MDM. And if there are more than 150 within an Apex batch process, then Cloud MDM will invariably fall over because you're simply trying to compare too many records with too many. If you imagine the mathematics, 10,000 records times 10,000 records in terms of processing gives you a huge number in terms of what you're trying to ask Salesforce to do within the governor limits. And then in terms of general tips about what we've learned whilst we've been in business. Now, if you get 20 of your salespeople and you task them with improving 10 records a week, now you will resolve 10,000 records a year. Solving data quality issues is not a quick fix. There are no quick fixes out there, even if you go and buy a solution that needs to be implemented within your Salesforce environment. But doing some simple things like targeting your salespeople to do their job will get your data into a better state. Consider making data improvement, and we're starting to see this in a lot of customers now, making data improvement a part of the sales compensation package. Yeah, so they're not just comped on their sales, but they're also comped on giving information back to the business in terms of what they want to achieve. And remember, it's the old adage that people can go under a bus. And if a salesperson goes under a bus without getting the data into good shape, you then can't take the customer forward. In our experience, people who love Salesforce have great data. People who loathe Salesforce, and they're wrong because Salesforce is a great tool, have poor data. It's been implemented incorrectly, and it's not in the best shape to actually run their business properly. So what we'll do is we'll talk through, we mentioned earlier on the various applications that are available to help you improve data. We'll talk through what we use on a day-to-day business with our business focused upon data and improving that for the customer experience. So the first thing that we do with any project is we carry out a data quality analysis process. And that involves some of the techniques I talked about a bit earlier, so things like spreadsheets, SQL, and that sort of thing, to get an idea of how much duplicate data there is within an org, what the data quality is. We try and look at completeness of records, because as I said earlier on, if you try and present blank records to an MDM process, for example, it will possibly fail because you're trying to present too much data which could be recognized as being similar. So data quality analysis is key to any project. And I'll tell you, there's a short story here. So 3 years ago, when we were first getting the business up and running, we were asked by a major customer to, could you analyze 18 spreadsheets of data, because we want to get this into Salesforce, but we need to understand before we do so how we can get that into a good shape, what is the level of deduplication and so on. And we spent 3 days, which we charged back to the customer with spreadsheets, doing our pivot tables, doing our filtering and so on, to try and get a bit of an idea for that customer what sort of position their data was in. And then we thought, we spent 3 days doing this, so albeit we have got a bit of revenue from it. We've charged the customer 3 days to analyse their data, and we had one of our juniors doing that. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a product that, the push of a button, can actually deliver that data for us? So with that in mind, we actually created a product called Data Salvation, which is available on Appssense, which will run through any object that you point the solution at, and will give you an idea of the completeness of a record, what is null, what is not null. Do records comply using regex? In list has children date compare. So there is a product available. It is our product, so excuse the plug, that you actually use to analyze data. And if you don't want to use this product, that's fine. You can use spreadsheets. It can be a 3D exercise to get to a similar sort of place. But we do have a product available that can analyze data at a push of a button. We use Data Salvation in every product that we do to inform the customer and inform the process in terms of a customer's data quality. Data enrichment is another solution we often bring into a product. There are many data enrichment sources, so Dun & Bradstreet, Hoover's, IMS, which is specific to medical. There are many data sources that you can use to enhance your data and enrich your data. So in a project, together with data quality analysis, data enrichment is always one of those things that we install in a customer environment. Within here as well, we have ETL. And there are numerous ETL tools that can be used. We focus on Informatica Cloud tools, but again, ETL is always part of a data enrichment solution, and that could be Skyber, it could be MuleSoft or so on. They do some similar things, but in slightly different ways. And there are some API cloud-based applications that are starting to appear as well. So ETL is a term you get your mind around it if you're going to go and look at projects. Understand the costs. The other thing to mention with ETL is that albeit there are many costed applications for ETL, there are also many free ways in which you can gain an ETL tool, even of those paid applications. So Informatica, as an example, and other tools do exist, They offer a free version of their ETL tool that can be run over 100 tasks a day. And for many smaller implementations, 100 tasks a day is perfectly adequate to actually move data from one database to another. Cloud MDM and MDM is an area where we focus. MDM stands for Master Data Management. And what MDM is about creating a golden record within an application set. MDM within the Salesforce environment basically means that you're maintaining the best version of the truth of a particular situation within Salesforce. And then in some instances, and in the most complete instances, you're then using the MDM object to then repopulate the other databases within your application set. So across an organization, everybody from the accounts department through to sales, marketing, and so on are looking and using the same data. So working in the most efficient way possible. Point of Entry MDM is a way, and again, there are a number of ways of doing this. Again, we use Informatica, but there's no reason why you can't use things like dupe stopper to actually stop new accounts and contacts and so on being created within the Salesforce environment. So Point of Entry MDM works in the same way that a batch process would work with MDM. It will try and match data, use something like fuzzy matching as a mathematical technique to say how much like one customer is another customer, in terms of their name, their address, their telephone number, email, etc. And it's worthwhile to point out that in MDM and the algorithms that you use, those are the fields that you really need to make sure are as complete as possible within your database environment. So name data, address data, telephone, and email are the best way of trying to match organizations and people together. After we've gone through a data project, we've got our customers' data into the best possible state. So we have a single account within, or in the case of a person account, you might well have a business account, you might well have a person account, so a maximum of 2 accounts within an object that relate to a customer. And we've got everything else parented in the right sort of place. Then we advise customers to go through a process of getting business process automation involved within their object. So business process automation is a way of guiding your telesales, or in fact your road warriors, to make sure that the data getting into Salesforce is in the right state. So it will guide people through a process of saying, well, have I got the name? It will do external call outs to things like LinkedIn and that sort of thing, so you can try and capture correct data. So again, business process automation often forms part of the solution that we deliver. I mentioned ETL earlier on. In fact, I probably got my slides in the wrong sort of way. ETL is generally where a project starts. So exchange, transform, and load. It's a way of getting data from one database or spreadsheets or whatever data source you have into the Salesforce environment. And when I was talking about spreadsheets earlier on, ETL is the tool that we use to get information from a database, Salesforce or any other database, into a spreadsheet format so we can play with it, manipulate it. And if you drag out the Salesforce record IDs with the data you bring out of Salesforce, you can then use that to enrich back up to Salesforce the data that you're bringing in. And that's a technique that we use very often in many of the projects that we carry out. So what I'd like to do now is, I've told you about the tools, I've told you about the free stuff that you can do. I'd encourage you to start to think about your data. But I'll give you a few examples of where we're working with customers and the sorts of things that we do, and we're asked to do on a day-to-day basis. So we're currently working with Appsense. Appsense is a company that sells a variety of software for desktop implementations. And they've asked us to do a particular project where we're using ETL to get information from Salesforce and back into SAP. SAP is a financial solution, and they will simply not give you access to their back-end database. As I mentioned before, if you can get access to a back-end database, it's great because it helps you recognize things. SAP really drives you to use their different validation procedures and so on. So what they actually provide is an API. So in the case of Appsense, we've used, again, Informatica Cloud. Informatica Cloud, I know we also have the same thing, have a specific SAP integration tool. And what that allows us to do is to talk to standard SAP APIs. It allows us to talk to what SAP call their BAPI connector and what they call their IDOC connector to actually talk to SAP and then for that data by SAP to be carried through their standard validation techniques. So any data that's been passed into SAP has to conform to the validation routines to ensure integrity. So in the case of Appsense, we're moving sales orders backwards and forwards between there. So we create a sales order within Salesforce, we then pass that to SAP, SAP then passes back to Salesforce the automatically created order number. So we've got referenceable data across the application set. As part of the implementation, they've also asked us to talk to their fair sale implementation, which is an HR solution within Salesforce. And again, in this case, we've chosen to use their IDOC template because it's not a real-time process to integrate to fair sale. So again, SAP, notoriously difficult to talk to, but tools are starting to exist within a number of vendors to actually do it in the way that SAP expects. It's becoming less difficult. We work with a company called Ecolab, and some of you may have heard of Ecolab. They're predominantly a US company, although they do work in Europe and the rest of the world. Ecolab is a hygiene company, and they deal with toilets and other nasty things to make sure that they're clean for hotels, for food groups, and so on. What Ecolab had a particular problem with, because they were dealing with hotel chains and dealing with fast food restaurants, is they need to understand how they interact with that customer. So again, within the tool that we implement, which is Cloud MDM, there is a hierarchy management solution. Ecolab is a massive company. The issues that we had with simply the size of the org they operated. So Ecolab have 12,000 active users, which is about the same size as Wigan, where I live. And those people, their salespeople need to understand how am I interacting with the McDonald's group or with the Wyndham Hotel group? How do I understand which part of the organisation I'm talking to? Is that being run by one of our franchisees? Or is it some white space in the group that we're not interacting with? So we implemented hierarchies across Ecolab with up to 25,000 different elements. So if you imagine a McDonald's chain in the US or even in the UK, now these are big organisations, understanding how we interact with them, defining a customer and so on was an issue for them, and we got them into a good place. Metlife is a solution we put together last year. Metlife is the world's biggest, or one of the world's biggest insurance companies, and their challenge was again immense in terms of what they wanted to do, but we managed to get the process into the right sort of place. So they recognised Brazil as one of their target markets, and through their web API, that they had 30 million different inquiries that are coming from customers, and some of those were duplicated. Customers have been on there and again and again. But it is possible within Salesforce to create a solution that will deliver deduplication of 30 million sales applications. We did this with ETL, we did with MDM, and a variety of other solutions to actually bring that together. And then, as you can see here, I've got a nice dashboard here. We were able to report upon what was being done, in what position the solution was. And then we worked with a company called Hydrogen in London. And again, you can deal with vast scope if you have the right tools. So what Hydrogen wanted to do was basically migrate 3 separate databases with 135 million records to one Salesforce implementation from legacy Oracle. Their system has been in place for over 10 years, and they did something, and this is about us learning as a business, really. If we were to do this project again, we would advise them very strongly not to look at 10 years of data. And if you're considering a migration or integration task, consider the value of the data that you're passing across, because somebody who moved job 10 years ago isn't going to be particularly relevant to today. So consider seriously what data you're going to move into Salesforce and whether it's going to be useful. I mean, notwithstanding, Salesforce, it costs you to store data. So why bring across data which is incorrect? So if we have our time again with Hydrogen, we would advise them to strongly consider, don't move 10 years worth of data, move 3 years. But we did. We were asked to, and we did so with 100% efficacy in terms of bringing their data across. So now I want to try and quickly, I realise that we're getting towards the end of our time, so I'll move through this next section reasonably quickly. Another project that we recently carried out, there is a case study on the internet, you can go and search for it, with Everton Football Club and Informatica Cloud. Basically Everton, if you imagine a football club, they have a particular problem. I think the problem is common to many organisations. So Everton as a football club wants to interact with its fans. It does so in a variety of ways. So there's season ticketing, there's day ticketing, they also have a web shop, they have a website, and they have a lottery, and some other ways in addition to that in terms of interacting with their customers. When we first went to Everton, we were presented with a particular problem, that their CEO, Rob Elston, was represented 16 times across their database set. And there was really no way without doing, in their case, and they did this every time, they had a 1-week process to make sure that when they were going to do an email list, that they cleansed the data and got it to a good state before they sent anybody an email. So to save the time, they realised they needed to get their Salesforce org to have 3 years into a good state, and get all of the data from these various data silos into Salesforce. So we help them to do that. And how we did it, and I spoke about this earlier on, is by using a variety of things together to actually create a customer solution for Everton. So what we ended up with, and I know this is difficult to read, but I'll bring out each of the points. So what we call this the circle of live that we need to get to with Everton to actually get them into a solution place with their data set. So the first thing we did is we extracted season ticket data using an ETL tool into their Salesforce environment. We actually brought that data through a address validation solution they were using. It was their own, it was not something that we supplied. And we washed that data to ensure that we had the best possible addresses of that fan before we brought them into Salesforce. We then again used ETL to bring that person record, it was a person account, into the Cloud MDM staging area. So rather than allowing data to pollute account and contact data, we brought it into MDM, where data can be matched and checked before you actually decide to convert that into proper object data. If the customer was a net new record, we then converted that to a new person account automatically. But if we found that the customer transaction was a standard season ticket, then we'd reparent that data with an existing person within Salesforce. So again, automatically, we started to solve their data issues as a business as usual process. So we converted the net new contract, again, using MDM, using outbound Salesforce triggers, and using ETL to actually do an automatic conversion of the net new record into contact. And again, we converted the net new business accounts from accounts within the staging area. So again, getting the data into a good shape before you put it in Salesforce, before actually applying it in Salesforce. We then imported any purchase transactions from their shop and their lottery, matching data, again, within the MDM import area with ETL, and we associated any purchase transaction data with a person account. So I'll dash through these. I realise we're getting towards the end, but what people need to recognise before they go into a data quality project is that there are several tools. In on-premise MDM that I mentioned earlier on, many of these tools are together in one single solution. In cloud, there isn't one solution yet that does everything for you. So what you'll end up with is a variety of different systems working together to actually create your data quality solution. So I'll move through this. I mean, do feel free to go and download this presentation. I'll be passing it to Ian after we've finished this. Do feel free to download this and use this information as you move forward into your data project. So these are some of the clients we've worked with over the last 3 years. We've been fortunate, and you know, if anybody wants to contact me about how we've actually created a business that are dealing with these megalithic type organisations, then please do. I'm very happy to share what we do. And if it's for next steps in terms of contacting me, again, do talk to me, Martin Lehman or Miranda, who's my partner in the business, and we'll be delighted to help you with your data project. So I think that's just about me, Ian. We do pass over for any questions, and feel free to ask away.
Thank you very much, Martin.
You're there, Ian.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Right, okay. I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Good, good. Questions. If anybody has questions, please pop them now into the chat window in the GoToWebinar control panel. You'll find it at the bottom, and we can pose those to Martin. So at the moment, Martin, I'm not showing any questions, so you may just have done a fantastic job of anticipating everything.
Or everybody's left.
No, we have a good audience still. So I'll just give a couple of minutes in case anybody is frantically typing up a long old question. If not, then we'll close. So a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat window, and we'll pose them to Martin. So, question here for you, Martin. Do you have anything that measures how dynamic data changes are?
Yeah, well, I mean, we actually have our own tool. So again, it was data salvation that I mentioned during the presentation here. And data salvation, we recognise, needs to monitor data quality over time. So the product will, you can run basically a process within there. It will manage, it will monitor and measure your data for completeness or compliance or so on, and then you can run it again sometime later, and it will show you if data's improved in percentage terms. So we do have our own product. I also understand that Salesforce are bringing out some new functionality in this area as well. So Salesforce are recognizing that customer data from an adoption perspective is becoming more of a requirement. So do watch out for new Salesforce features. But right now we use our own product that we developed and is available on the App Exchange, and there is a free download of it as well.
Thank you. Second question, is data salvation available on a trial license, and what is the commercial cost of the product?
There is a trial license. I mean, what we actually did is we've limited it to 1,000 records, and it's a random 1,000 records. However, because we own the product, if you want to contact me directly, I can get you a month's free trial of the product to run in your sandbox environment. So yes, it is available. You can go to App Exchange and contact us, or feel free to contact me directly on my email address, and we'll get you a free license in place. And let's make that a special offer for people attending the seminar.
Okay, special offer. Love it. What tools do you recommend to import complex relational data into custom objects?
Well, we use, and again, this is really because of a close association we have with the organisation. We actually love the tool, but we use Informatica Cloud Services. Informatica is a huge US company, and this is one of the successes of our business, and that's why I may occasionally sound a bit biased, but we have a close association with Informatica, and Informatica Cloud Services is a great way of moving either individual objects, or you can also move multiple database sources in a single job. But again, other tools do exist. So there's a good shout out there for MuleSoft, Skyver, Jitterbit, and so on. There's a variety of tools you can use. Informatica Cloud is again a payable. In fact, I remember now. I didn't answer the question from the previous caller in terms of data salvation costs. Data salvation costs $1,000 a month. And similarly, Informatica Cloud Services will cost you $1,000 a month. So there is a cost to it. Free tools do exist. So if you're within a budget, and I know we all are, then free tools do exist. It's just for us, Informatica is extremely reliable. When it creates there are service level agreements with it that if you're going to do a big long sort of solution, I'd advise you to go down that route or look at it certainly.
Thank you, Martin. So currently not showing any further questions. Are there any final questions before we close? Just give it a minute, Martin, just in case, again, people are typing up any final questions.
And again, if people are thinking of questions later on down the line, feel free to just ask away, and I'm available here, and Miranda is, and in fact Laura is also on the call. We're available to answer your questions, and very happy to answer them. We don't think that data quality should be viewed as a black art. People need to understand that it can be done, where to start, and so on.
Okay, I think, Martin, that we will finish it there. Thank you very much to yourself and to the whole team at Cloud Perspective. Really appreciate the effort that went into that. To our attendees, thank you for joining. I hope you found it useful. The recording will be posted in our community group on success.salesforce.com. If you want to find that, the link will be in your original invite. And please do look out for our next webinar, which will be running in about a month's time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.